We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. It is Saturday. We're into the weekend, kind of a busy week. The good news, we'll talk more about it later, but the good news is that Maine mass shooter was found dead a short distance from Lewiston, out near Lisbon or something like that. I don't know all the details. We'll talk more about that in a minute. But it's good news that the people of Maine can get back to a normal way of life. I know there was a lot of anxiety and fear in Maine, not knowing what was going on and not knowing if this crazy fuck was still running around. Well, fortunately, that is over. We still have to deal with the tragedy, the people that have died and the people that were injured. But at least the rest of the state can rest easy now that this guy has been found dead. And of course, he took the coward's way out because that's who these people are. This guy was a weapons instructor. He was tied to the military. He had mental health issues. He heard voices. Um, He's in a state that has permitless carry, so he bought this AR-15 perfectly legally, even though he had mental health issues. I talked about a representative for the state of Maine who apologized to the people of Maine, saying he was going to take a stronger stance on gun control, stronger than he had been before. And I incorrectly suggested he was a Republican representative. Turns out he was a Democratic representative, so I stand corrected. But that doesn't really change the issue at hand, because as many of the Republicans that support the Second Amendment freaks, there are some Democrats too, a fair share of Democrats who are at the NRA trough and get money from it. This guy named Golden, was AA rated by the NRA, and he's a Democrat. So our problems with guns just aren't Republican related. They are involving all our members of Congress, or I won't say all, but members of Congress on both sides of the aisle, put it that way. I wanted to bring something else up too. I don't know if this will interest you or not, but it got my wife kind of excited, and I guess I was excited about it too. Um, we Yesterday I had kind of a brush with fame, as it were. You know, from time to time, people will recognize me and come up and say, "Hey, how you doing?" And as I tell them, I'm more excited by the fact that you recognize me than you are excited about recognizing me. It's a great honor to have people come up to me like that. So it's a big deal. And from time to time, people will go on TikTok and they'll say, "Guess who's following me? Guess who's," I've even had some people who done that to me. "Guess who's following me? Rational Boomer." I got to be honest, it's not that big a deal. I'm following like 9,000 people. I like to follow people for a time, and then I adjust and switch it out. But if I expect people to follow me, I want to at least return the favor to the extent I can. You understand that on TikTok, you can't follow more than 10,000 people. So I've gotten to the limit a couple times, and then I go through the ones that I don't need. Usually they're the bigger accounts that are kind of corporate run or something interested me, a recipe or something. Then I'll shed them and I'll put in some more individual people. But I follow a lot of people. I've never really paid attention to the names. I mean, I know a lot of names of people who follow me because I hear from them, and of course, you're here on the podcast. Um, but I don't watch it so closely as to say, well, who follows me? Do I have a big name? It doesn't matter. I'm not worried about the big names following me. But I got an interesting DM yesterday. Do you folks know the person when I say the name Tyler Henry? He is called the Hollywood Medium. He's a young kid, and he's had some shows on Netflix and some other platforms, and he's extremely popular and pretty well known. My wife is a big fan of his. I'm a fan of his too. I've watched the show. I've always had some intrigue when it comes to psychic abilities. Now, I've done some shows with some psychics. I've interviewed a number of psychics, and I would say about half of them were real. I'd sit down and I'd interview them, and half of them would be fine, and we'd get some interesting information. And I've always said, for me to really believe in a psychic, I believe the ability is there, but I don't trust people generally. But somebody's going to have to do something that really I can't explain, and I'll look deep into it. And some of those people were able to do something close to that, but there were other people that are obviously doing this cold reading thing, and I can pick it out. I ask the wrong questions, I piss them off, and then they leave. Anyway, I'm digressing there, but anyway, I get this DM from a woman named Teresa, not Teresa Caputo, but Teresa, and she said, Mike, I'd like to offer you some tickets to a show at the local casino here. My son is Tyler Henry, and he's the psychic that's on Netflix and some other platforms and such. And I'd like to give you some tickets. We're big fans of yours, or at least she is. And I'd like to meet you when you come out, assuming you take the tickets. Now, the first thing I think of when I see this is, yeah, that's bullshit. And I said, if you are who you are, we'd love to take the tickets. I know my wife would freak out about this. And so, yeah, we would like to do it. I said, but I got to be honest. I don't really know that you are who you say you are. And if your son is Tyler Henry, he knows exactly what I'm talking about, because I'm sure he gets way more than I do. And so we talked a bit. She gave me her phone number and we texted a bit. And she said, listen, how about if you and I just do a FaceTime so that you can see I'm real? I said, no problem. I trust you, but I want to make sure, especially with my wife, she's going to be very excited about this. And if I disappoint her on this, it's going to be a hard way back. Anyway, so I tell my wife, she's all excited. She's questioning it too. And so she gets home and we FaceTime, and damned if it isn't Tyler Henry's mom. I know who it is because I've seen her on the show, and my wife was very excited, and perfectly wonderful woman, very nice lady. And she's apparently going to leave tickets for us, November 11th at the local casino, and we're going to go see Tyler Henry, and my wife couldn't be more excited. And that kind of thing impresses me because I'm a guy sitting in my living room, and these people are actually on TV with big platforms and all this stuff. And for whatever reason, they were interested enough in what I'm doing here that they were willing to have us come out to a show. And I got to tell you, I checked the ticket prices on these shows. Shit's not cheap. It's about like anywhere from $100 to $400 a piece. And she says, don't worry, I think we can get you good seats. I said, Teresa, Jesus Christ, you're giving me free seats. Don't worry. It's in a casino. They're all good seats there. Don't worry about that shit. Anyway, so that was exciting for me, and really exciting for my wife, that somebody notable was a fan of the Rational Boomer. That's incredible. And I'm pretty excited about it. Now, I'm sure there's some of you that say, I don't believe in psychics, or psychics are evil, or whatever. You can believe whatever you want. I found the show entertaining. I found it compelling. And I found this particular show better than most because it wasn't a show. It was them doing what they do. Too often these shows end up looking like sitcoms, and they got drama and all this shit. And this one doesn't. And there's some interesting things that have happened to this Tyler Henry that kind of give him some credibility. You maybe remember the story where he was talking to stars, as he does. And one of the persons he was talking to was Alan Thicke. Remember him? Robin Thicke's dad, Thick of the Night, the old TV show and shit. Anyway, when he was talking to him, and it was on television, you can still see it, he warned him about some issues with his heart. And I know that Alan Thicke didn't really take it to heart, no pun intended, but he didn't take it to heart. But sadly, within like a month or so afterwards, he died, I believe, of a heart attack. So that was pretty interesting and a certain amount of validation. Anyway, we're going to go to this thing on November 11th. Thanks to the um, generosity of uh, Teresa and her son, Tyler Henry. We're excited about it. I'm excited that she even watches or listens. I'm excited when any of you watch or listen, whether you're famous or not famous, rich or poor, it doesn't matter. Everybody that's in the audience is of equal level to me. And I'm appreciative of it every day. All right, we got some emails to get to, so let's get to getting. First one starts out, Mike. On Thursday's podcast, you spoke of Mike Johnson's divine and godly calling to the House Speaker position. You misunderstood when he said that God chose him. Not the God, the other one, his God. His God is Donald Trump. I stand corrected. You're probably right about that. He goes on to say, I agree this type of good Christian has all kinds of twisted skeletons in the closet. These discretions make great entertainment for a public that loves scandal. If anything, he will lead the Republican conference further to the godly right world of anti-abortion, anti-LGBTQ, anti-Medicare. Not the best way to capture the hearts and minds of most rational people. Couldn't agree more. One last point, never trust anyone who wears their religious belief, any religion, on their sleeve like they are chosen. Thank you, Paul. I said that yesterday, I believe. I believe that personally, I believe that in my experience, the more a person is overtly religious, meaning spouting scripture and judging people and doing all that stuff, the more religious they appear, it always ends up being the more despicable they are. And this new speaker, Mike Johnson, he's a despicable, lying, slimy motherfucker. That's all I got to say about it. Anyway, the next email goes like this. Hey, Boomer, just listening to your podcast today, and I had a couple of thoughts. First off, it will never cease to amaze me how smart and rational people can hitch their wagons to the orange shit stain. Well, see, there's your problem. These people aren't smart or rational. Never were, never will be. Especially if you get into an Ivy League law school, which maybe your parents paid for or you took out loans, spend all the time and effort into getting a law degree and passing the bar just to have it all ruined by some piece of shit. How can someone be so intoxicated by a cult of personality that you would throw your entire life's work away? Have you ever met a lawyer? Now, I'm just going to say up front, I'm not saying all lawyers are bad. I'm not going to say that because I know there are some lawyers in the audience. And if you're in this audience, the Rational Boomer audience, you're cool. But I've had a lot of lawyers. I've hired lawyers in my time when I was in business and that sort of thing. I never had one lawyer that I trusted. I never had one lawyer that didn't try to ace me out of something, even though I was paying him. Now, that said, my brother is working with a former guest on the show, Monty Moyer. He was with the Time. He's trying to get his writing credit and publishing back. There's a new law that after 35 years, you get all your writing credits back. And my brother's helping him. And he's contracted with a lawyer, a well-known lawyer in Los Angeles that we met 30 years ago, 20 years ago, or whatever. And he said, you remember us? And this guy is going out of his way to help Monty and my brother. He's a good one, but they are few and far between in my experience. Anyway, we continue with the email. Jenna Ellis, for example, she's a young lawyer and went to a very highly regarded law school, but threw it all away for Trump. Why? Power. She saw Donald Trump as a president, and she thought she could make her way to the top by way of Donald Trump. And she thought Donald Trump would keep her safe. Well, she was wrong. She was intoxicated by the power. She made a bad choice. Because the senior attorneys she was working with were doing Donnie Diaper Rash's bidding, and she figured that if they were doing it, it was legal and all good. I take issue with that argument, and I would also argue that she was never a good attorney. I'd have to agree with you. If she was a qualified attorney, she would still have some semblance of common sense or critical thinking. Even if she keeps her license to practice law, who would hire her? She's obviously gullible enough to believe anything, not a good quality trait for a lawyer. I mean, come on. How did you not understand that trying to overturn the election is illegal? She was sick that day in law school, apparently. When they taught you that committing crimes is against the law, I thought that was the first day shit. She's a dum-dum, and I can't wait until I see her testimony on TV. I also took joy and pleasure watching her cry in court. Bitch, you get what you deserve. Karma will always come back, and usually threefold or even more. Get fucked. Couldn't agree more. I think I've said that before. On the Speaker of the House problem, I don't see any way that Johnson could be Speaker for more than a couple of months, largely due to the nuclear option that any member of Congress can call a vote of no confidence. I just can't see how he plans on keeping the speakership. Not to mention, once Diaper Donnie is convicted in D.C., all the other superseding indictments will come out. We all know he's an election denier, and he played a key role in the January 6th insurrection. So who knows? He might very well get an indictment. Jack Smith also knows this, and so does his grand jury. Don't be surprised if he's indicted and removed in another 6 months or so. How embarrassing will that be for Republicans? Electing this jerk ass as a speaker, and then he gets indicted because he committed crimes while he was a sitting member of Congress. I can't wait to see him go down with the rest of the MAGA crazies. Oh, make no mistake, that motherfucker's going down. But I'll be honest with you, having him as Speaker of the House really doesn't bother me. He's got no power. Kevin McCarthy had no power. He's not going to get anything accomplished. And even if he does get something accomplished in the House of Representatives, the Senate's going to shut him down anyway. And even if it got through the Senate, Joe Biden will shut him down. He will accomplish nothing. But at the same time, he's spewing all the things that Republicans won't like, but would like to keep quiet. They don't want people talking loud and proud. He's a big anti-abortionist. He's an insurrectionist. He's part and parcel to the coup and future coups, if that's possible. He is going to make the Republicans look so bad, it'll make it even worse in the 2024 election. Final paragraph, he says, I would still love to be on the show sometime in the future, but my schedule can be a bit hectic. Maybe sometime in November, because I have a fair amount of PTO that needs to be used before the end of the year. Love the show. Keep it up, Vinny. Well, here's the deal, Vinny. I send you a Zoom link. We talk for about an hour, and then you're done. It's not that much time. Don't make excuses. Send me an email. Tell me when you want to be on, and you will be on. I should say this, too. Old Soul was going to be on today. Unfortunately, I got home late, so I'm recording this late, and it was too late for her, and I understand that completely. And so she's going to be on at some point this weekend or Monday or something. So if you're looking forward to Old Soul, she's coming up. All right, the next email. Hey, Mike. Well, like many others, after researching Mike Johnson, I was terrified. Then I listened to your podcast and calmed down a bit. However, there are so many bad things, truly horrifying things about this guy that should be made public. We all know by now he's anti-abortion, anti-gay rights, anti-gay period, an election denier, a major Trump-lefuck, a Christian nationalist, And one other thing I found out, he is a member of the Alliance Defending Freedom. That group is one of the backers of Project 2025. This to me is the truly terrifying thing. I know he can't pass anything with the Democratic Senate and Biden, but the Project 2025 is beyond horrifying. I believe Biden will win in 2024, but there are a lot of young people pushing narratives about the Middle East and how they won't vote for Biden because of it. Now. You know better than that. This is what polling is saying. And where's that polling coming from? And what's their agenda? Don't believe that. That's not true. It's not that bad. They want you to think it's that bad. They want you to be scared going into 2024 because they need any bit of leverage they can get. Let me put it this way. These people are always saying things that aren't true, hoping that some way they become true. Like, for example, our Speaker of the House. He was asked about this shooting in Maine. He said, well, these kinds of things aren't because of guns. They're because of the human heart. And then he went on to say that, like in the 60s and the 70s, you had the abortion issue, you had feminism and women's rights and that sort of thing. He said that's what caused all these shootings. You have to understand these fuckers are pathological liars. They're trying to scare you that all the young people are going to vote against Joe Biden because of the Israeli thing. That's not true. It's not going to happen that way. They also told us there would be a red wave. Let me tell you something. If nothing else happened to the Republicans, the one issue of abortion is the one is enough to sink them in 2024. Throw in all the other shit, they don't have a fucking chance. 2025 will never get off the ground because they will never have the power to do it. She goes on to say, we have to find a way to get rid of these idiots. They're planning not to vote to understand how important it is to ensure no Republicans get in office of the president. It doesn't have to be Trump as president for Project 2025 to be pushed. It could be any disgusting lying Republican since they're all MAGA followers. I believe the Dems will win in 2024, but this shit show that is Johnson and his MAGA fools in Congress just scare the bejesus out of me. Kind of like if we leave one of them in office, they'll reproduce like roaches and come back stronger. How will we ever get rid of them once and for all? They're kind of like cancer metastasizing in one's body. You don't have to get rid of them all. You just have to get rid of enough of them where they have no power. And let me tell you something. Come 2024, when Democrats take the House, Democrats take the Senate, and Democrats maintain the Oval Office, they will have no power. They will look at these things like this Speaker of the House is spewing, and then they will finally realize that it's a loser. They lost in 2020. They lost in 2022. They're going to lose in 2024, and it's going to be worse in 2028. They have two options: fold up shop and do something else, or change their image. And the image this Speaker of the House is presenting is a loser. And they're not going to have any choice but to shut it down. She goes on to say also, what is going on with the Kraken lady? She takes a deal, then spouts more election denying shit and says her plea deal was coerced and extorted. Isn't this something that would reverse the plea deal? Haven't we heard anything from Fani? Why haven't we heard anything from Fani Willis? Keep on calming me because I'm a bundle of nerves lately. Hugs, Deb. Well, Deb, just relax. It's going to be fine. I know what you're talking about. Now, you have to understand what came out regarding this being coerced for taking the deal. We don't know that Sidney Powell wrote that. We know it came from a group that is alleged to be run by Sidney Powell. Now, that doesn't take her off the hook. And frankly, if she keeps spouting this stuff or is connected to a group that does spout this stuff, certainly her plea deal could be yanked, and it should be yanked if that's exactly what's happening. Will it happen? I don't know. Does Fonnie Willis need to do it? I don't know. But I mean, I think we should all consider the fact that uh, we can't trust any of them. And if they're stupid enough, if she's stupid enough to do this, she needs her deal yanked because there'll be plenty of other people to flip. Put the bitch in jail and shut her the fuck up permanently. All right. The next one starts out, and I don't understand this. Dear Santa. No doubt this is a proposed letter to Santa with Christmas coming up in a month and a half or 2 months or so, about 2 months. It says, Dear Santa, I only want one thing for Christmas. It's a little thing, but kind of specific. So I'm writing early to give extra time. I just want a picture of a picture. The picture should be of what appears to be a credenza in a hotel room. On the credenza is a Polaroid photo of Mike Johnson apparently having a My Little Pony party with a male adult entertainment specialist who goes by the name of Montana Mike. That's it, Santa. Just a picture of a picture. I've been a pretty good boy and I hope that you can find it. Thanks in advance. Best Garage Door, Jeff. P.S. Santa, I'm pretty sure the picture exists. You know better than anyone that thems that object the most are usually the bad ones. I think that guy Shakespeare had a quote on that. Yeah, I think you're right about that. I've said the same thing about this guy. This guy oozes of scandal. It's always these types of guys that end up with this scandalous behavior and have done something that they're embarrassed of. I got a story about his wife. She's kind of a fucking freak too. This guy is going to be filleted by the press and by people like us every day. This guy flew under the radar for so long, and he could have just done that, but he made the same mistake that Donald Trump made. He jumped into an arena that's over his head. He's jumped into an arena that he can't control. Now, depending on what district he came out of Louisiana, so it's probably a big MAGA district. He can stay popular there easily enough because they're all dumb fucks and think the way he thinks. But now he's got more to worry about. He is on a national level now as Speaker of the House. All of us have a chance to have some input. And unfortunately, unlike his district, all of us don't necessarily agree with the motherfucker. So this guy is going to be grilled and he is going to be filleted for the next year. I mean, I think that's the important thing to remember. He really only has a year in office, if that, unless an indictment comes out or some scandal that he just has to walk away in shame. All those things are possible. At most, he's here a year. He has no power to accomplish anything. All he can do is spend his time saying the quiet things out loud and damaging his own party. He thinks he's smart. He thinks he's right. So he's going to keep yapping. The people that will be most disappointed by his behavior and his performance in the House of Representatives will be the Republicans. Don't be surprised if they don't find a way to kick his ass out. They made a huge mistake putting this guy in. And I'm not talking about MAGA. MAGA was probably happy to put him in, Matt Gaetz. Matt Gaetz even said this. He said, MAGA is on the ascendance, meaning it's getting bigger and stronger every day simply because they put this guy in as Speaker of the House. Matt Gaetz is a big fan of this fuck. But what in fact is going to happen, it's going to hasten and further the destruction of the Republican Party. Everything this guy says, at least 70% of the people in this country think the opposite way. Now, when he was just a little representative representing his little district, he could survive this because nobody knew him. Nobody ever heard from him. But now that everybody's going to hear about this dumb motherfucker every day, he's going to have problems. His little safety net is no longer there. He is an issue for all of America. And as I said, 70% of Americans think he's a fucking nutcase. So we'll see how long he lasts. All right. We are going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. Well, we are back on the Rational Boomer podcast, and we do have some more emails. So let's get to it. Well, the new House Speaker went on Sean Hannity's propaganda show and claimed Biden is in cognitive decline. Has he heard DDD speak lately? And what the fuck is it to him anyway, according to this disciple? Biden was appointed by God like him as speaker. Don't be fucking with God's plan. This hypocrisy and BS is taken to a new level with these folks. Another day, I am so grateful Biden is our POTUS. If DDD was we will be forced to learn Russian with the upcoming takeover. Biden gets no credit, just blame. And what the fuck is Dean Phillips, a Democrat who claims Biden can't beat Trump, so he's running? Since he's from Minnesota, tell us, Mike, what you think he's up to. No chance in hell of beating Biden. Is he a plant by the GOP? Nothing surprises me nowadays. Till next time, Jace from the recent eerily quiet state of Texas. Yeah, Dean Phillips. I did a TikTok about him. I think I talked about him on the podcast too. But on this TikTok, maybe I didn't talk about it on the podcast. Dean Phillips pisses me off because it's all about arrogance with him. I don't know what he thinks he's trying to pull off, but apparently he's not bright enough to understand that it won't work. Dean Phillips is from Minnesota. He actually represents the district I am in, so he represents me. And I will tell him, as I told him on TikTok, you lost my vote. You fucking lost my vote. I don't know who I will vote for. I won't vote for a Republican, but I will not vote for you because of this little fucking stunt. And let's be honest, that's what this is, a fucking stunt. The guy has only been in the House of Representatives a short time. And the idea of him becoming president is ludicrous. Nobody knows who he is. Hell, most people in Minnesota don't know who the hell he is. And what has he done? Well, I'm in his district. I don't know what the fuck he's done. I kind of keep up to date with things that are happening. As far as I know, he hasn't done anything. But what he said was that he's looking at the polls. And Joe Biden's not getting good enough numbers in the polls, and we can't afford to lose to Donald Trump. So we need a young, smart guy in there. So he's offering himself. This motherfucker's in the House of Representatives. And are you telling me you don't understand how polls work? You dumb fuck. Now, I don't like this guy. As far as I'm concerned, I will do everything I can to campaign against him. This is all about arrogance. It's all about him. And I'm tired of fucking politicians like that. He's a piece of shit. I wasn't a fan of his in the first place because he's a rich kid that just decided to go into politics. He is part of a family, the Phillips family. And apparently, well, not apparently, they do make Phillips vodka, which is a cheap, shitty vodka that's kind of regional to the Midwest. But apparently there's enough homeless people buying his fucking vodka that he's rich. So I don't know. I think he's an asshole, and I will do anything I can to get him out of the House of Representatives. What he's doing is a stunt. It's about his ego, and it's not helpful to maintaining this country's safety. This 2024 election is a very important election, and we don't need somebody like this fucking clown to come in and make it more complicated. He should know better. He's going to get a lot of backlash from his fellow Democrats and from people in this state. And if we need somebody to lead the charge against this dumb motherfucker, I'll be there. I'd be happy to do it. All right. The next email says, "Hi, Mike. This is my third email to you this week, and I don't want to wear out my welcome, but I felt compelled to get your opinion on this. Don't worry about how many times you email me. There is no limit that you can email me. There isn't a time when I don't want to hear from you. Just email me when you have a mind to or when you have something to say. It's fine. You can do it twice a day for all I give a shit, because I've told you many times before. Other people might have limitations on emails, but this is my fucking show. I'm going to do whatever I want, and I'm going to do whatever my listeners want. And if you want to send emails, you take the time to write the emails. I'm going to take the time to fucking read them. Anyway, we continue on with the email. We all know about the travesty that befell the people of Maine. My heart honestly goes out to them. My issue is with their representative in the House. He publicly came out and said he was reversing his opinion on weapons of mass destruction. He originally voted for them to be legal, but now after hitting him at home, he's against them. This annoys me to no end, and I want to know if I'm alone on this. You're not alone on this. This pisses me off too. I believe he's telling us as long as these mass shootings were happening in other states, there's no problem. But now that it happened in Maine, it's an issue. Are you fucking kidding me? This is a goddamn problem with MAGA. Now you see the irresponsibility of your beliefs. Please give me a break. Your entire party is FUBAR. Yeah, I said the same thing. I called him a Republican. He's in fact a Democrat, but he's a NRA toady, regardless of what party he's in. And you're absolutely right. What, Uvalde wasn't enough? Sandy Hook wasn't enough to put a light bulb over your head? The Pulse nightclub, that wasn't enough? Here's the thing, buddy. You may be sorry now, but had you took notice in those other incidents, this would have never happened in fucking Maine. So blood is on your hands, you stupid motherfucker. Paul, who's writing this email, says, I trust you know what that means. And he's talking about FUBAR. I do know what it means. And for those of you that don't know what it means, it's a military term it's an acronym for fucked up beyond all recognition. He goes on to say, to top it off, his Democratic counterparts come out and applaud him for finally seeing the light. No, admonish him for his original position. Let him know these people's blood is on his hands. We're on the same wavelength here. MAGA can't get out of power soon enough. I'm just so tired of all this illogical rationale. Please tell me I'm not alone on this cliff. Help me down from it. Thanks, Paul. P.S. I will try to limit my emails from now on. I know that I'm not the only one listening who wants to be heard. Do not limit your emails. Write as many emails as you want. Fuck that. Like I say, it's my show. You want to write 100 emails? I'll read 100 emails. And you're not alone on this cliff. At least I can say for myself that I did a TikTok about it, and I'm equally as disturbed by this asshole. That's what he is. If he looked beyond the end of his nose and he decided to take less money from the NRA, a lot of these mass shootings, there are 566 this year. 566 mass shootings in this country in 2023. That's far more than we have days. So that's multiple shootings per day. If you had the common sense and the logic and the compassion to do the right thing instead of stuffing your money, your pockets full of NRA money, we wouldn't have some of these things. So you're exactly right, Paul. This guy has blood on his hands, and he fucking knows it, and he's guilty, and now he's trying to worm his way out of it. Sorry, it's not that easy. You are who you are. Even though you think you're going to convince us that you're changing your mind, I'm not buying it, and I don't accept it. All right. I think this is the last one, last email for the day. Good evening, Boomer. Just read that Mary Trump is saying is that Donald is actively working on a coup with the new House Speaker. Supposedly everything will be rigged in advance. Can't wait to hear your thoughts on this. Crazy Cat Mom, Portland, Oregon. Yeah, Donnie's got all kinds of plans. Tell me the last time one of them worked. I mean, when we talk about the coup, the original coup on January 6, 2021, think about this. He was the president. He had control of the Senate and the House. Okay. He had connections in the Pentagon. He had connections in the Supreme Court. He had connections everywhere. He had people holding back the National Guard. And he still fucking failed. These fucks still fail. Nothing Donald Trump does works. Donald Trump is losing footing and losing power every day. 6 months, 8 months from now, Donald Trump will be a non-factor. He'll be so buried in legal bullshit, and he'll be falling apart emotionally after all his money and power and properties are taken away from him. He can talk all he wants, but every time Donald Trump suggests something or even insinuates something, it's generally a lie. It's bullshit. It's trying to get people scared and try to use his bully tactics. There isn't going to be another coup. Something like that doesn't happen again, especially when they aren't as well positioned as they were in the first one. By failing that first one, it just tells me a little more pushback. They don't have a prayer. He's not going to do it again. Nobody's going to get on board with that. There are 1,000 people convicted of doing this. He can't get anybody to show up to his fucking rallies anymore, for God's sake. Yeah, don't worry about that. Everything's been exposed. The fake elector scam, that's out the window. The trying to intimidate secretaries of state, that's out the window. He's got no firepower left. He's got no tools to even try it. He might say it, others might say it, but it's not going to happen. It can't. All right, some news. The big one, of course, a man wanted for the fatal shooting of 18 people at a bowling alley and a restaurant in Maine. They found him dead on Friday, ending a frantic statewide search. His name is Robert Card, 40 years old, of Bowdoin, Maine. He was wanted on 8 counts of murder following 2 separate shootings Wednesday evening in Lewiston. State police said 13 people were injured in the shootings, according to police. Now that's strange to me, because they were saying 50 to 60 people were injured. Now they're saying 13. I don't know what the difference there is, but we'll take them at their word. Card's body was found with an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound at 7:45 p.m. local time near the Androscoggin River in Lisbon Falls after an extensive 48-hour manhunt. Maine Department of Public Safety Commissioner Mike Soschuk said at a news conference late Friday at Lewiston City Hall. Lisbon Falls is about 10 miles southeast of where the shootings took place. And this is why they couldn't find him. They're out using heat-seeking cameras and that sort of thing. And he was fucking dead, so there was no heat. Thankfully, they found them. And thankfully, the state can relax now and get back to business as usual. They don't have to be fearful of some wild man running around with a fucking AR-15 shooting everybody willy-nilly. I'm not at all surprised that this fucking coward took this way out. More than 50% of the time, this is how it ends anyway. I'm just thankful that they were able to find this piece of shit's body and they'll be able to throw it in the dump or whatever they're going to fucking do with it. But this former human, now corpse, deserves zero respect. Now, families of the victims and the suspected gunman were among the first to be informed when Card's body was found. Officials declined to provide additional information about how the body was discovered, but said they will share more at a briefing 10 a.m. today. So they may have already done that, but who gives a fuck? The guy's dead. It's over. Thank God for that. I believe all the victims have been identified. So I think things can start to get back to normal. But it was a frightening period of time for those folks in Maine, and it's just weird for me to have been there the week before. Like I say, this state, the towns I was in, they seem like sleepy, very nice, calm towns. Maine doesn't have that big a population, maybe 1.3 million for the whole state. You would have never have imagined something like this happen, but as people have said, this was kind of a perfect storm. Here's a guy that is a gun freak, is somebody who trains people in weapons. He's tied to the military, a reserve unit, I guess. He has mental illness. He heard voices. He bought the gun perfectly legally, which is an outrage, frankly. There should have been a red flag, but of course, in Maine, there is no red flag. So anybody can get a gun, just shoot anybody up. And we're supposed to believe that there shouldn't be any kind of gun restrictions. I'm glad that part of it's over. But there are going to be families that will struggle with this for years. It will impact so many people. I saw one situation where a man and his 14-year-old son was killed in these shootouts. Can you imagine what that family is going through right now? It's appalling. It really is truly appalling. This has to stop. And one representative in Maine isn't enough. We got a lot of people filling their pockets full of NRA and gun lobby money. Shit's got to stop. And as I've said before, this is Republicans, but it's also Democrats. We need to put out the dumpster fire we're currently dealing with, and then we need to go after this gun issue hard, regardless of if the NRA likes it or some of these reps want to keep getting money. Too fucking bad. You're there to protect the Constitution and protect the people in your constituency. If you aren't doing it, then fucking move along. We don't need you here. We had an interesting bit of news. Ivanka Trump has been ordered to take the witness stand in the civil fraud case against her father, her brothers, and the family business. A judge ruled yesterday. She tried real hard not to have to testify. She said, well, you can't make me testify because I don't live in New York anymore. Sorry, that's not a thing. Then she said, well, you didn't serve me right. Oh, you want to get out of this on a technicality. Sorry, that's not going to work. Then she said, can I just testify in writing? No, bitch, you're coming up here. Then she said, can I do it on videotape from Florida? No, bitch, you're coming up here. And she's upset about this. She doesn't think it's fair. You know what I don't think is fair? Cheating all the people, including the U.S. government and all of us taxpayers for decades. I think that's unfair. I think the very least you can do is go testify. They took you off the hook in this case, and you should be happy as a motherfucker about that, but you're not. You're still trying to cover for your father. Well, go ahead, cover for your father, but you're going to get sucked into some shit you don't want to get sucked into. I know this is a tough decision for you. You want to step away from your father, but you don't want to leave him hanging. Well, you're going to have to make a fucking choice, and there'll be consequences either way you go. Too bad. You got to be a big girl, put on your big girl panties, and do what you're fucking supposed to do if you have any integrity at all. Now, the ruling came weeks into the trial of the New York Attorney General Letitia James lawsuit against Donnie Trump, Don Jr., Eric, and the Trump Organization. Now, after Ivanka Trump was dismissed from the case months ago, lawyers for her and the defense contended that she shouldn't have to take the stand, noting that she moved out of New York and stepped away from the Trump Organization job in 2017. Too bad. Your brother said that you were involved in some negotiations, so you know some shit, and it's your responsibility to talk about that shit. The state's lawyers argued that the former Trump Organization executive vice president has relevant information. Judge Arthur Engeron sided with the state, citing documents showing that Ivanka Trump has ownership or management ties to some businesses in New York and still owns Manhattan apartments. Yeah, bitch, you still own apartments there. Just because you moved your sorry ass down to Florida doesn't mean you don't have some culpability in the state of New York. Now, Engeron said, Miss Trump has clearly availed herself of the privilege of doing business in New York, Engeron said. He said her testimony wouldn't be scheduled before November 1st to give her lawyers time to appeal, which they will. James' lawsuit accuses the former president of overstating his wealth. We know that. All the defendants deny the allegations. Donald Trump, the current Republican 2024 presidential frontrunner, has called the trial politically motivated sham. James is a Democrat. Oh, goodness sakes alive. Well, your buddy down in Florida is a Republican. You're not bitching about that. The ex-president and his sons are expected to testify at some point. That's going to be interesting. In a surprise preview, the elder Trump ended up briefly on the witness stand Wednesday to answer Engeron's questions about an out-of-court comment, the gag order. Ivanka Trump's lawyer told the judge Friday that the state lawyers had no legal basis to make her testify. At the end of the day, Your Honor, they just don't have jurisdiction over her, said attorney Bennett Moskowitz. Well, that's not true because of her ties to the business in New York. And, hey, even if it were true, how about we just get Jack Smith involved? How would you like that, Ivanka? Have Jack Smith indict you for your activities on January 6th. A state appeals court in June tossed the claims against her as too old. Ivanka Trump announced in January 2017, ahead of her father's inauguration, that she was stepping away from the Trump Organization job. She soon became an unpaid senior advisor in the Trump White House. After her father's term ended, she moved to Florida. So Jack Smith is going to call you. You were in Washington, D.C. on January 6, 2021, and she did quit she may not have been working for Donald Trump at that point. She may have bailed at that point, but she was there in the lead up to all of this. So she has some culpability. All right. We had some activity with George Santos. George Santos seems to be such a piddly topic these days with all this crazy shit going on. But led by Representative Anthony D'Esposito, a Republican from New York, House Republicans introduced a measure Thursday to force a vote on removing Representative George Santos from Congress over his history of promoting falsehoods about himself and his campaign. D'Esposito said, "We must remove this con man from office." Santos is facing nearly 24 charges of fraud and other financial crimes. in a New York federal court and is expected to be arraigned on Friday. D'Esposito's measure is a privileged resolution, which the House typically must act on within 2 legislative days, making a vote likely next week. The House recessed Thursday, not scheduled to resume business until Wednesday. Take a lot of fucking time off, don't they? Now, D'Esposito previously pushed for Santos' removal through legislation he introduced on October 11th, backed by fellow New York Republicans Brandon Williams, Nick LaLotta, and Mark Molinaro. However, the legislation did not receive a vote as the House remained a stalemate for weeks due to Republicans' inability to elect a speaker. So, what does this current speaker think of this kerfuffle, this bullshit? Well, he came out and said as much. Well, we've got a slim margin. It wouldn't make sense to send somebody packing. We've got to let due process run its course. So the Speaker of the House, in their mind, or in his mind, is that George Santos should stay in office until he's convicted. Yeah, that's going to do well for you, Speaker of the House. You're fucked. Nobody in this country agrees with you. You're full of shit. This guy reminds me of Aileen Cannon down in Florida. This holier than thou attitude and thinking he knows everything when in fact he knows very little. So I don't know how this is all going to play out. I almost don't care, because it's such a minuscule problem in the light of all the other things going on. You can keep George Santos in there. I don't give a fuck. I mean, it won't give Democrats the majority, so it'll be a slimmer majority and it'll be helpful. But as it is, they can't do anything anyhow, so what difference does it make? Now, we've talked about the new House Speaker, Mike Johnson, Republican from Louisiana. Apparently, his wife runs a counseling business that deems such acts as adultery, fornication, homosexuality, along with bestiality and incest, as sinful and offensive to God. Kelly Johnson runs the Onward Christian Counseling Services, which preaches Bible-based pastoral counseling. Are you surprised? Oh, this is going to make it fun for him. According to the outlet, the company's website features a link to an 8-page operating agreement that it published in full. Now, the document that was signed on July 1, 2017, breaks down the company's corporate bylaws such as treating the Bible as the ultimate authority of the company. Marriage is defined by having only one meaning, and that is a marriage sanctioned by God, which joins one man and one woman in a single exclusive union, as delineated in the scripture. Yeah, there's a lot of things in the Bible, like stoning women for adultery, like killing somebody for eating pork on a Friday. There's a lot of shit in the Bible. And if you're going to hold people to the letter of the law for anything, you should hold them to the letter of the law for everything. But you won't do that. What they do is they pick and choose their little issues and they pervert it and they use it to push along their agenda. So fuck them. Apparently, it also seems to preach tolerance. We believe that every person must be afforded compassion, love, kindness, respect, and dignity, according to the document. Hateful and harassing behavior or attitudes directed toward any individual are to be repudiated and are not in accord with the scriptures nor the doctrines of the company. How does that work when you're taking constitutional rights away from women and putting them in physical danger by what you're doing? Or how does that come into play when you are basically trying to incite violence against the LGBTQ community? Excuse me. It's all hypocritical. Every bit of it's hypocritical, and it's oh so typical of these religious fucking freaks. Yet its tenor of acceptance appears to be at odds with certain acts that are considered unforgivable. Isn't God a forgiving God? But they're saying that there are some things that are unforgivable. Even though, don't we all know that all we need to do with God is ask forgiveness and he'll give it? But apparently not if you read the Bible the way these dumb fucks read the Bible. Goes on to say, we believe, and the Bible teaches, that any form of sexual immorality, such as adultery, fornication, homosexuality, bisexual conduct, bestiality, incest, pornography, or any attempt to change one's sex or disagreement with one's biological sex, is sinful and offensive to God. It's funny, I missed that scripture. I've never seen it laid out like that in the Bible. I would love to see where it proves that. I'll guarantee it's some obscure thing that they perverted to make it say what they want it to say. This guy is going to bury the Republican Party. People aren't going to tolerate this stuff. The fact of the matter is, churches around the country are losing membership in a big way all across the country. Not because they're stepping away from God. You don't have to go to church to be God-fearing. That's the deal with God. You can deal with him directly. You don't have to deal with him through some fucking nutcase like the ones that run these particular churches. People are growing tired of it. They're growing tired of the scandals, the grifting, all the bullshit with churches. And as I've said before, I'm as religious as the next guy. And when I say religious, I'm talking about believing in God and the basis of the teachings of the Bible. I'm saying that when you're dealing with a church, all too often you're dealing with individuals, human beings that control the church and then pervert it and push along their agenda and try to make it fit the Bible in the weirdest fucking ways. It's kind of like the Second Amendment. They like to suggest what they believe the Second Amendment means, but the Second Amendment is very clear. They talk about, it says everybody should have a gun, but it also says a regulated, well-regulated militia, which this motherfucker in Maine was not a well-regulated militia, right? But he should still have a gun. Anyway, we're getting close here. So I have one last story. Judge Arthur Engeron lost patience with Donald Trump's prosecutors Friday as they questioned former tax lawyer Sherry Dillon during a second day of testimony. Dillon, who worked with Trump between 2005 and 2020, testified Friday morning about development restrictions, and ABC News reported that Engeron excused the witness from the stand to make a comment about the line of questioning. And this is what he said. He said, "I feel we are 2 or 3 elements away from anything that is relevant. It seems to me this is becoming a game of gotcha." The state attorney, Louis Solomon, had been attempting to highlight restrictions the former president allegedly agreed to accept for 2 properties that seem to contradict proposed conservation easements. Dillon testified, yes, it's complicated, saying the restrictions would not impact the conservation easements. For the most part, it didn't matter. Here's the problem that these lawyers are having. These lawyers aren't able to try this case based on their own knowledge and abilities. Each one of them has to be accountable to Donald Trump, and Donald Trump wants to dictate what these lawyers do, which is dumb. But it's not surprising that Donald Trump would take that tact. These lawyers are embarrassing themselves at the bare minimum. They might even get sanctioned or even disbarred for some of the things that Donald Trump is pushing them to do. They should know better. They do know better. But for whatever reason, they're afraid to go against Donald Trump. Well, please do that at the peril of your own livelihood and your future, because that's what is at stake. You're going to get fucked over. Many lawyers have. Many lawyers of Donald Trump have lost their license. Some are even being prosecuted and even convicted of crimes. The same kind of crimes that these fucks are going to be held accountable for at some later date. I don't understand it. It's absolute madness that they would do this. But like I say, their livelihood and their lives in general are at peril as long as they continue to do what they're doing with Donald Trump. All right, we are going to wrap up the Rational Boomer podcast. I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen. I hope you have a great day, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow.